What up, perps? Kid Copious, back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here. Repping America, the center, and common sense. Big thank you, and I love you for all the people who have been watching. You know, I'm just trying to get America on a different track. You know, I don't think the red track works. I don't think the blue track works. You know, I'm trying to bring a purple perspective to the news and, you know, try to make the world a better place, you know. One person at a time, that's all I can do. You know, that's it, man. So, you know, again, thank you for watching, and let's get to it. So I guess the big story here in America right now is that our government is shut down. You know, the long and short of it is that it's healthcare subsidies, you know, and the Republicans are basically saying, hey, these are expensive subsidies, and we should debate them in a separate healthcare bill. The Democrats want to secure multi-year funding to stabilize healthcare access. You know, I understand that. I think that's something we need to do. I do believe that everybody deserves to have good healthcare. People should not be dying in this country because they can't afford healthcare. You know, I mean, I think that's the bottom line. But I tend to agree with the Republicans a little bit on this because it is something that should be debated as a separate bill. I've never been a fan of writing a bill and then adding in all this other BS that doesn't really relate to the bill. We should have our government open. But both sides see it as a way to broaden their political strategy. You know, the Democrats see it as a way of holding up the Republicans, trying to make the Republicans, especially Donald Trump, because they all, you know, they seem to have some sort of derangement syndrome over the guy. You know, I think he's trying. I think he's giving 100%, but whatever. And I think the Republicans are using this in a way to trim the government. And that's something I really do believe in. I think the government has way too much fat on it. It really needs to go on a diet. You know, I think that holds true for state governments and federal governments. Now, you could argue there are states out there that probably need a bit bigger of a government. Okay. But overall, I think government should be smaller. And I think we should get back to understanding that politicians work for us. They don't work for themselves to get reelected. That's not what the point of this game is. And that's what we have, as a society, learned to just accept, that this is all about them getting reelected, them remaining in power. I only want the best hardworking people in politics. I want the people who cut across party lines to get things done. I want people who look at the areas that they represent and do good by those people. I mean, we have a lot of screaming memes out there. You know, the Maxine Waters, the AOCs. They ignore their districts. They ignore the people that they're supposed to be working for. And that kind of crap needs to end. Okay. So, over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, they're having a comedy festival. And David Cross, the guy I liked, you remember him as Tobias on Arrested Development. He had a statement about some of the comedians performing over there. And he says, I am disgusted and deeply disappointed in this whole gross thing, that people I admire with inarguable talent would condone this totalitarian fiefdom. For what? A fourth house? A boat? More sneakers? Yeah, because we're talking about people who don't need the money. I understand, just like David Cross said in the article, you know, he understands the people who are just trying to put food on the table, taking $100,000 to go perform a set in Saudi Arabia. You know, for context, you know, Saudi Arabia was one of the last nations to allow women to drive. Up until 2017, women could not drive in Saudi Arabia. Don't get it twisted. They have a lockdown Islamic mindset there. Women are shit in that country. That's just what it is. They'll claim, oh, it's about protecting them and blah, 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 blah. But they are essentially a fascist regime. And a lot of the people who went over there to perform criticized Donald Trump for being a totalitarian. But then they go and they support him. And yes, they are supporting him. Because Saudi Arabia and some of these other oil-rich countries are going out of their way to take over things like golf and soccer and now comedy. And this is a hell of a comedy lineup. You know, one of the people that went over there, Dave Chappelle, you know, poked fun at the alleged chilling effect on free speech in the United States after, he signed up to do this. You know, he was talking about how, wow, in America, you can't just say what you want, because look what happened with Jimmy Kimmel when he spoke out against Charlie Kirk. Well, those are the rules the left put in place. Dave Chappelle is the guy who got in trouble for talking about transgendered people. Well, good luck with that in Saudi Arabia. They don't condone that kind of stuff. Sure, during this comedy festival, the only real restrictions were you couldn't make fun of religion, you couldn't make fun of the rulers in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure you wouldn't be very smart to bring up Mohammed or anything about that. Another guy I respect, Mark Maron, said on his WTF podcast, I mean, how do you even promote that? From the folks that brought you 9/11, 2 weeks of laughter in the desert. Don't miss it. I mean, the same guy that's going to pay them is the same guy that paid that guy to bonesaw Kamal Khashoggi and put him in a fucking suitcase. But don't let that stop the yucks. It's going to be a good time. Khashoggi was a Washington Post reporter from here in the United States, and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is linked to paying people to have Khashoggi assassinated. So I don't really understand Chappelle's point about free speech, because over there they'll just whack reporters if they don't like them. Here we take Kimmel off the air for a little while. Wow, okay. But some of the people who performed over there, here's some of the names, because these are people who I've lost a lot of respect for. Kevin Hart, come on, he's got all the money in the world. And Aziz Ansari, Hannibal Buress, Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., Whitney Cummings. I mean, I don't know why Whitney Cummings would want to go to a place that is so oppressive to women. Pete Davidson, Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy himself. And Fluffy's worth tens of millions of dollars. He doesn't need the money. Jim Jeffries, Joy Coy, Bobby Lee, Jeff Ross. That hurts my soul, Jeff Ross. These are the same people who will speak out against Trump with, for everything and anything. But yet they'll go over and they'll support a regime that has been linked to financing terrorists, linked to assassinating reporters. We publicly admit that they do not like the LGBT community, and they have a low respect for women. And these people go over there. And then Chappelle wants to bring up, oh, it's freer to speak here. Well, you're sure you could go over to Saudi Arabia and bash Charlie Kirk all you want, and nobody's going to say anything. But here, the left set guidelines during the paper ballots, during COVID, things like that. We weren't allowed to just say what we believed. We weren't allowed to have discussions. No, we had to believe the party line. That's how the left is. You have to believe the party line. My wife is telling me about how liberal women are finding themselves isolated. Well, as a more conservative centralist, okay, I'm just a centralist. I'm not really more conservative. I don't like that frickin' label. I don't mind if people disagree with me. People in my own family disagree with me. I don't really care. That's your opinion. Let's have a debate. Let's talk about it. I don't really care. I'm not going to isolate myself from people who don't agree with me 100%. But on the left, that's what they do. And that's why they've all rallied behind Jimmy Kimmel. But that rally was short-lived. Jimmy Kimmel sheds 64% of audience after short-lived ratings spike. Yeah. He was benched, and I think rightfully so, because, if we're going to set rules saying that you're not supposed to spread misinformation, disinformation, then, what he did was disinformation. He told his small, tiny little audience, I mean, yeah, it's bigger than mine. I don't give a shit about that. But in relative terms, he has a small audience, and he essentially was telling people what he told them. I don't want to repeat it. But yeah, on Thursday, he came back last Tuesday, or the previous Tuesday, excuse me. By Thursday, he was averaging 2.3 million total viewers, a staggering 64% drop from the 6.5 who tuned in for his much-hyped return. He shed even more viewers in the advertised coveted demographic of 25 to 54, with Thursday's episode hemorrhaging 73% of those viewers. In that key demographics, he had less than 500,000, only 48 hours later. Because people are getting tired of it. I think there are, I've said it before, one of my most popular videos was Podcast D2, talking about how the Democrats should divorce themselves from the far left. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that going on, where people are no longer comfortable saying, I'm a Democrat. I do not share 100% beliefs with the far left, the socialists, let's say, right? And they don't care. They're no longer like, you know what? I don't give a shit if I fit in. I vote the way I vote. I don't really care anymore. And so I think a lot of people came back to Kimmel's show and realized, oh, yeah, that's why I left. It just wasn't funny or whatever. I don't watch his show. I've got a grudge against the guy. I admit it. But whatever. Whatever. It is what it is. But when he came back, did he apologize at all? No. And he took no responsibility for the falsehood. He wants to make it out like, oh, the mean conservative Republicans got me canceled. Well, that's not really the case. Your side set the rules during the Biden administration. People are just following the rules now. One of the Turning Point spokespersons, Andrew Colvert, said Kimmel is an unrepentant liar who tried to blame Charlie's assassination on the part of the country that just spent 2 weeks praying and holding vigils. Yeah. You know why that's important? Because they didn't spend 2 weeks burning down cities for some freaking criminal. That's why. Because what happened in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination was people saw conservatives for who they were. God-fearing people who just wanted to be good, wanted to be left alone, and didn't really want to overinflate what had happened. It was sad. It was tragic. A life was snuffed out. A father, a husband, had his life snatched from him simply because he had a differing opinion. And it continues, and it continues, and they don't learn their lesson. The far left does not learn their lesson, and they are starting to shed voters left and right. And one of the reasons is because people are seeing what Trump's doing. Trump tells Congress U.S. is at war with cartels. Now, there's all these legalities. There's all of these scenarios about, non-international and armies that are not, actually part of a country. But, he is at least doing something. He is putting into action something that needs to be done. We will never win the war on drugs, okay? One of the reasons is because the U.S. has a demand for drugs. But at the end of the day, you cannot make it easy on these people. You need to snatch their money. You need to take them into custody. And if they won't stop to be arrested, you need to wipe them out. Why should we be making things easier for drug dealers? Why? We shouldn't. We shouldn't. We can save lives one person at a time by stemming the flow. It's so cheap to buy shit out there on the streets right now. Anybody can become a drug addict, and that's not what we need. And a quick note on that, when are we going to do something about all of the hard alcohol ads? The other night, I was watching a movie with my daughter and soon-to-be son-in-law. They're both 20. We paused the movie, and there was a Buzzball commercial. Today, I was watching a soccer game at 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? And one of the commercial breaks was for some new Fireball alcohol. 33% alcohol, hard alcohol. What the frick are we doing? It's the same thing with the gambling. Our government wants to protect us from this mythical climate change, but they do nothing about addictions that ruin families and destroy lives. All right. So the far left. The reason I have a problem with what we're going to talk about here is that when you are telling your followers, okay, no matter what you are, an influencer, celebrity, a musician, whatever, right? When you're telling people your sort of concocted story about something, it gets in the way of the truth. And when it comes to what's going on in Gaza, the truth really matters. The BBC recently reported on people getting food aid, getting killed by IDF soldiers. They don't mention that those reports come from Hamas. They don't mention that Hamas is the one doing the shooting. No, they literally had the gall to say an unidentified Palestinian gunman. No, that's Hamas. This is another story. It was all about the headlines. This global smooth flotilla had no aid. The Israeli Prime Minister reveals. It was never about bringing aid to Gaza. It was about headlines and social media followings. None of the 40 vessels participating in the global smooth flotilla, which Israel intercepted on Yom Kippur, was carrying humanitarian aid. Okay, they took a video. The hole was pretty much empty. It was just all the people's personal stuff. Now, before people start screeching about, well, the Israelis are lying, well, where's the photos? All of those social media influencers, those Greta Thunbergs and people like that, where are the photos of the aid? You could debunk this. Where's the photos? And even worse, these flotillas are being sponsored by proxies of Hamas. These flotillas are in contact with Hamas officials, many of them hiding in Qatar. They're not in Gaza. The leaders of Hamas do not live in Gaza, Palestine, or any of that. No. They're safely removed from the battle over in Qatar, which is why Israel struck them. But again, they're just lying. They're making you believe that if you are a far left, if you are a Democrat, you should be on the side of the Gazans. Now, if you want to talk about the people who live in Gaza, the civilians, the innocents, sure. But keep in mind that these very same innocents are being brainwashed into believing that Israel must be destroyed. So while you're protecting a child, keep in mind that that child is being groomed to grow up in Hamas. Now, I'm not saying wipe them all out, but something has to be done. One of the prime minister, what is he here? He's the minister, the national security minister, Ben-Gvir, said that these people should be spend time in Israeli prisons for a few months. After all, it can't just be that Netanyahu sends them back to their countries again and again and again, which causes them to return again and again. That's the problem we have here in America. We deport people, they come back. See, it's a never-ending cycle. Those are the truths that need to be spoken. You know, you can feel sympathy for an individual in Gaza or an illegal migrant, right? Just trying to better their lives, just trying to get through day to day, whatever. But keep in mind, what is the truth behind that? That when you take your foot off the pedal like Biden did, look how many people flooded here. And look how many nasty people flooded here. Not all of them are nasty. Lots of them I say, welcome. Let's get you on paper. Let's get you into being an American. But just like Gazans, the migrants are not innocent either. They're using stolen identities. That's how they get work. That's how they get, can do things legally in this country. That's how they can get driver's licenses and things like that. They're using stolen identities. And who's to say that they're going to stop at just getting a job? They may use those identities to essentially steal from American citizens, much like the Gazans, who Greta Thunberg is so keen to protect, are just going to turn around and attack Israel again. Now, recently, Hamas has agreed to release the last of the hostages. They seem to be wanting to go along with Trump's peace plan over there. Trump has gone as far as thanking the Muslim nations that helped broker the deal. He has also told Israel to stop bombing so that we could get this deal done. But make no mistake about it. If Hamas is left in power, they will just attack. They will just attack again. Because for some reason, that's just their mindset. Recently, a man drove a car into a Jewish synagogue in Manchester, England. He got out of the car and stabbed 2 people to death. If it wasn't for the bravery of the security forces and even a rabbi, this man, who came from Syria, would have killed more people simply because they were Jewish. He threatened to have a bomb, that he had a bomb, and the police eventually had to shoot and kill him. And this is a guy who came to the UK as a very young child, and he was granted British citizenship in 2006 as a minor. But yet, he doesn't want to just live and let live. No, him and a group of other people conspired together to attack a group simply because they were a different religion. And yet here in America, we have people, and we're going to get into what Joy Reid and Hillary Clinton have been saying. They seem to support the Muslims. Cool, whatever. Let live and let live, like I say. But at the same time, keep in mind, these are the people who are going after the LGBT community. These are the people who are going after Jewish people simply for being Jewish. America shouldn't stand for that. None of our people should be standing behind a group of people who just want to eradicate another group of people simply because they disagree. You know, one of the things I think that's starting to drive Democrats away from the left is when you have headlines like this. Joy Reid warns that Republicans want no income and people to earn as much money as they want. She's saying that the conservatives want to return our country to the early 20th century, if not the 19th century, with white men on top. And they want to get rid of business regulations. Her quote right here. And one of the reasons they're so serious about it, if you go back before the 20th century, there were no income taxes. There were no regulations on business. You could earn as much money as you want, leave 100% of it to your children with no taxes. Well, that doesn't sound too bad. She went on to say, and to get it back, they need society to change. They need people to be less modern. They need people to want fewer things. They need people to be satisfied with just being workers. And they don't really believe that any of us have natural rights. The F are you talking about, lady? She's really desperately trying to get back into the public eye. Sorry here. I'm just trying to scan through my notes for a second because I could have sworn I had something else here. I don't know where it went. Well, apparently, I don't have that page. But another one that was really trying desperately to get back into the public eye was Hillary Clinton, where she goes after white Christians. See, that's the part that I just do not get. That you want to protect some groups, but then demonize other groups. I've been a member of many different little churches along the way. I've been inside. I was raised Catholic. I was a Latter-day Saint, aka a Mormon, for a while, and I butted heads with people, and I disagreed with some of their viewpoints, but they gave me the keys to the church. I ran a basketball league 3 nights a week. I had people from the community, people from the church coming out, bonding, getting together, sharing values, exercising. They allowed me to be who I was. They weren't always thrilled with every detail of the way I choose to live. Okay, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But like Charlie Kirk showed in many different videos, we can disagree, but we can still love one another. People like Joy Reid and Hillary Clinton, they're saying the kind of crap that they're saying. I'm going to throw Hakeem Jeffries in there too. They're not concerned with actually making things better. They're concerned with making their lives better. And that's really gross to me. I know Republicans do it too, but the vocal lunacy is coming from the left, not necessarily the Democrats, the left. Mamdambi, come on. Are you kidding me? We're going to put a Democrat socialist in charge? Look, if I thought their ideas had any chance of working, I would support a lot of their stuff. But the problem is that in my 50 plus years on this earth and in this God-blessed country, I have seen their ideas fail. Why? Not necessarily because the idea was bad, but because the idea was open to exploitation. And that's one of the things they don't want to look at. They don't want to look at the fact that a lot of their policies are abused. I mean, I think right now, especially here in California, if you really look at just the homelessness and the bullet train, you will see such levels of corruption, it would make your head spin. The problem with that is is that that's money that we need for our society. I pay my taxes to better our society, not to better Gavin Newsom, not to better Hakeem Jeffries, not to make Joy Reid richer. That's not what we're in this for. We're in this to make all of everybody's life better. Laws that cover and help everybody. That's why I agree with the Democrats on healthcare subsidies. But let's look at it. Because one of the problems that we have when we talk about subsidies is that you have rich people taking advantage of those subsidies. You have insurance companies taking advantage of those subsidies. Just like the 4 years of Biden where we had lax border policies. People took advantage of it. And then these people, instead of admitting their mistakes like Jimmy Kimmel, continue to preach their one-sided look at life to their followers without any context, without any truth. And that's freaking gross. Joy Reid is absolutely a hypocrite. She just spouts nonsense to get people to watch her. But she said one thing during this talk. She emphasized the importance of being a journalist and an activist, calling journalists the last thing standing between us and fascism. Activists? No. Journalists? Yes. But we need balanced journalists. That's what I'm trying to bring here. I'm trying to bring a little balance. I'm trying to bring sort of a purple state, a purple viewpoint to it. If you go back and listen to what I say, I'm not 100% against either side, because purple is made up of those sides. You know, Betty White, woman who I've known, my whole life as a celebrity, she said she was an animal advocate, not an activist. The reason she said that was because activists tend to overblow the importance of their cause, and they go too far with their cause. I'm looking at PETA right now. That's why I'm not trying to be an activist. I'm not trying to be a purple activist or a conservative activist. I'm trying to be down the middle. I'm trying to look at these things and say, what's really going on here? What's the long-term effect of this? What's the truth behind the headline? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm Kid Copious, Purple State Party, and so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And accept people for who they are. Listen to their ideas. That's really important. I have to listen to people's ideas. That's how I come to be purple, because I realize that the Democrats have and had some good ideas. But enough of that, man. Let's hit the music and dance it out.